How are you doing with this lab so far? Painful? Thank you for the honesty. That's all good. Fine. We will hopefully can cover some stuff that help. Let me try to talk through what's difficult. The first part, task 1 here. Are we all clear that if we define a variable, the binding will work? And this is a shift. You guys will see what I mean when you start to use. You see that okay, the English part is the most important, and then the Ruby part is secondary. Because when you're trying to print these guys, and you try to display this text, a lot of people initially try to put something like this in here, right? And some of you even forget to put the string in there. So try to keep your ERB tags really simple. It's just the variable, and anything else that you can put outside, put outside. Okay? And in this case, for example, if the item is not done, you can do if else, which return this string or that string. But I give you here an example. Here's a string, and notice I'm using a different syntax for string. This may be more convenient for some of you. Right? For a lot of us, because I don't want to type this and then all this string get broken because of the symbol, the quotation marks. So I hope that dead or alive, you guys have to plow through milestone A and get to B. So this afternoon, go through B, but let me explain one change that I'm making, and so that you understand this ERB syntax. It's very powerful, but please focus on this one because it will be a little scary at first. Alright, so you notice I added something called index.html instead of index. Okay? Now, in the previous lecture, we only learned something like this. Alright, so ERB is just a method, but it can do a lot of things. Right? If you give ERB a string, what do you think will happen? ERB will just try to render that template. So for example, if you use ERB as hello, name, and you pass in the locals, name, go to school, this is the root path, right? So let me go and try it out. It will say hello, go to school. So be super careful here, okay? If you give ERB a string, it will try to render that ERB string. And by now, this makes sense, right? If you give it a symbol, you're telling it that, hey, convert it into a string and then go and open that file. If you give index symbol, I'm going to run and show you what happens. It will complain that there's no view index.erb. So you can fix that by creating the views folder and create an index.erb file. So far so good. Do you notice that VS Code kind of just say, oh, it's just a text file? It's true. This means that if you have any ERB in it, this doesn't have to be HTML, similar to what Ian asked earlier, right? Is it HTML? Well, it could just be hello, go to school, like that, right? We just happen to want it to be HTML. So there is a convention that we can follow. I can make it clearer than this index.erb. Therefore, in this lab, I'm asking you guys to use index.html.erb. So imagine taking the file index.html.erb, you render it through ERB. What you get is a file index.html. Okay? So for example, in Rails, if later on you use Ruby on Rails, you may have like .js JavaScript file .erb. It means you're going to use ERB inside JavaScript. And then after you run Ruby, all you get back is JavaScript file, and then the browser will run the JavaScript. So technically, we can also have index.css style.css.erb if you want to use variables in your template. So for most of our purpose, it's only index.html.erb. But for this to work, I have to tell the app to use index.html, right? Okay? But for this to work, right now there is a problem. Ian, can you guess what the problem is? Sorry, Ian. Ian, what is the problem here? The dot. When you have the dot here, it thinks it's a method. So this will not work. It will just say, there's no method HTML for this symbol index. So therefore, if you're converting any string that has a special character to a symbol, you have to keep the quotation mark. So you guys haven't used it, but for example, in ERB, remember a person can be named Adele, age 21. But if you really like to use, instead of name, you really like to use something like full space name, this is not going to work. For it to work, you have to put the quotation mark around it, and you can still do this. What is Adele's full name? Does anyone know? No. I have no idea. So then this is not this is a person, and now your person will have these keys. But you notice there is a special case. So the dot, the space, even the minus, they all need this, right? It only makes sense if you use something like full underscore name. That's a variable name, converting it into a symbol. Of course, this is nothing now, so you can set it. So the person now has these keys. Super important, especially for Sine and William. You guys are new for the key and the value in a hash, right? And then the symbol. So here's how I say it with the index.html symbol. And Sinatra will convert that into a string with a .erb after that. And then it opened that file. Okay? So I recommend that we use this because it's a little cleaner, clearer, more explicit. For those of you who are even more advanced bonus, later on you may want to change, instead of HTML, you may use Haml or Slim. These are languages that can convert to HTML, but you write less code. So remember, programmers always build something that make it easier to write code. For now, you see everything we write, we have to have a close and open tags, and there are ways to not have to write this long format. Slim is an example, which I recommend for your bigger project. But if you use HTML, your friends can understand your code and they can work with you more easily. If you use Slim, you need your friend to learn Slim before your friend can work with you. So, of course, which is not a problem. It takes like an hour to run Slim if you really want to get used to it. Slim will look like this instead of Slim is like Ruby for HTML. Get rid of all the parentheses, all the less than, greater than, everything reads like beautiful HTML. Slim is just a better version of Haml, what some of you may have heard of. Haml is the sort of sexier HTML. Slim is sexier than Haml. It's very similar. Okay, well, that's the background knowledge. So I know that ERB can do this. We're good there, and we have a local variable we know how to use. So focus on that in your milestone B. Where's my milestone? Any questions so far for this statement syntax? Some of you may say, well, no, I want to make it like index like this, and I want Sinatra to be smart enough. That's okay. You can tell Sinatra that, and I actually have that as a bonus. If you use this line, with this line, Sinatra will add HTML.erb instead of ERB to your code, to your template symbol, and that will work as well. But I feel like if I give you guys this, many people will feel this is too advanced. This is like register or something, and it's okay, right? Sinatra is using another library called Tilt, and Sinatra is managing the extension here. So the default is ERB. You can say, hey, forget about .erb, use HTML.erb. So that's the second way, but I'm not going to use that method. I'll just ask you all to be comfortable with the string symbol. Okay? Next, this is the cool part, is that this is the new lecture stuff that you will use for milestone C. You notice that I have here, let's run the server again. I have 3 files, index.html, about.html, trello.html. Index, let's look at index. Now, I no longer need this file, delete. Index.html. HTML, there's a head, there's a body, etc. Same thing with Trello, there's a head, there's a body. And even better, I have some styling going on here that I probably need to copy to index. It's nice to keep both like that. So the real code that you write is not much. It's only here. The fake code, like the boilerplate code that you don't have to write, but you have to copy every time, is here. So we need something like a template for our template. That's called layout. So I create a file. I copy this Trello file, copy everything, go to the layout, and I paste everything in there. Now, remember HTML5. So I just for those of you who are not sure, this is the thing that say my file is HTML5. So better have it in there so that the browser will respect your code better. And then you realize that, okay, everything in the body is not needed for your layout, right? Maybe later you can have a navigation bar that is for all the pages, or you can add a chat widget that just like come up, when a visitor come here, or a footer. So maybe you have some header here, some footer down there. But all I care about now is whatever code you give me in the other template file, we'll use the layout and then insert that code into the body tag. And the syntax for layout is yield. Yield is just saying that, hey, put all the content in the template file into this yield part. Okay? Now I'm going to go to Trello. If I keep it like this, it will run the whole thing, right? Remember that? But let's see. I go to app.rb and I tell Trello to be using layout.html. Here is another example. If I use layout.html as a string, okay? Now what happens when we use a layout file? It will use the layout text. And exactly that. You go to Trello, all you get is that text, right? Of course, if you want this layout to really print, then you say yield. really print the content of this file, right? Then you say yield, and then I try this, and it will yield everything. But this is completely pointless. I'm just showing you that so you can understand that if you pass a string to layout, and especially in that string you have yield, it will render the whole file in ERB template into that. Obviously, you want more than that. You want this to be your HTML, and then you want this to be the body part only, right? Now my string should be saved to a file instead. And when you save to a file, you should use a symbol. Okay? And when you use the symbol, of course, if you use true, it will just use a default value. If false, means don't use a layout. But I'll say I use a symbol, layout. Let's see what happens. Who here can guess what happens? Yeah, what? If I run this right now, it's saying no file layout.erb. So this argument is exactly the same as the first argument over there. I need a layout.erb file. If I say true, by the way, it's the same as that. True, then it should use the default layout name. This is your default layout file. And I run, it will be that. If I say false or nil, it means don't put it. Okay? Alright, so I say layout. But I need to use my layout.html.erb because I don't want to use layout.erb. It's an HTML file. Okay? In your text editor will be smarter too. So if you put HTML here, it's smarter. It will recognize the HTML format. So what should I change this to? Layout.html. The ERB part will be added to the string. But it has to be this string and then turn it into a symbol. If you don't give it a symbol, look at the colors. That's going to be the text. If you give it a symbol, then it will go into the views folder and find layout.html.erb.
And if you don't have the quotes, then it thinks it's a method.
And then if you don't have the quote, it will look like a method, and you can see from the color there. Okay? So it's awkward at first, but when you understand it, it looks elegant. It makes sense. So I'm going to go to the layout file, and I do remember this, and I'm going to run this, right? Here, let's look at the page source. Do you guys see something funny? Inside the body, there's HTML. You don't want that, right? Why does it happen? Because in Trello, I still include a lot of things I don't need. Delete, delete. And all of this can just go, it's plain and simple. So this part is the code that you put in codepen.io. If you put HTML or body or anything, CodePen will say, hey, dude, that's my job. I give you the layout, right? You only need to put the body part of the code. So this is very similar to CodePen. And then I go here again, refresh. Oh, so much better, right? That's your layout. Ian, could you tell me how to fix the index file to use this layout? Index file, this whole thing. I want to use the layout for my index page. See this? Enter. I'm going to take out the style sheet so you guys can see. Okay, so initially, let's say index page is just like that. No layout. You see the font? Font is a serif font. No layout. But I want to use the same layout as Trello because if you click on Trello, you see how the font is different? Maybe they look nicer, right? So how do I do that? So Ian, how do I tell index to use this layout? Huh? Add the what? Nil? Huh? Yield. No, layout has yield. That's it. You can forget about layout now. Do you have yield in Trello? So, what do you put in Trello.html now? Only what you see. These guys. Do you have to worry about the structure? No, right? So let's go to index. Now, Oscar, how do I use the layout?
Wouldn't I change it in app.rb?
Yes, so I go to app.rb. I
And
add
then
one more thing.
Or yeah.
Layout is a key.
Then so.
What is it?
2. What's up?
Layout.html. Okay. So that is the situation. If you go to the home page now. I reload, refresh. Your eyes on the screen. You see. Is there any problem?
We probably still have some extra lines.
Correct. In source, you still have this extra line. Ian, would you like to help me fix this extra HTML? All right. Go to index. This HTML, extra HTML is from here. Extra body is from here. So how do I fix this problem? Should I delete them? Okay, so I delete them. Should I delete the thing at the top as well? Body and HTML here? Or this one and this one. So I delete them. So now you see your index file is similar. Right? This looks clean. And now we delete stuff that's not visible on the screen. But it's important not to have too many HTML tags. Right? So, about page. Oh, look, last time our about page, we did not even care about the HTML body and stuff, right? So now we can just use it. So look, click on about me. It works, and the font is using the new one. No, not yet. Yes.
How would you specify route when there's 2 layouts?
Specify what?
The route when there's 2 layouts. So you see on line 5 right there. Is there a way to say that, like, hey, I want you to render this, and then yield, and then render this? For like a footer, for example.
Sorry, this and then yield and then this.
Okay, so on line 5, on app.rb, we say, hey, let's render the layout.html file. But let's just pretend that's the navigation bar where the head is, right? So how would you also tell it, hey, but I also need you to render the footer on every single page, or on this page?
When you need to do a footer on every single page, where do you go?
Layout. Oh.
So you just answer your own question.
Oh yeah, I did it.
So, for example, now here I have a footer, right? I'm gonna say the footer is, there's the border top 2 pixel solid, dashed black, and then this footer is a copyright. Go to school, 2017. Okay, that's my footer. And if I run this right now, let's fix this first. I wanted someone to fix me this about page. It's not using the layout. William, would you like to try? The about page is not using the layout.
So you want to add it to...
You want to tell it to explicitly use the layout. If you don't, then it just render the file. So your ERB line is all with the word layout here. So let's try it one more time. Hey, do you guys see that? It has the thing at the bottom, and I'm going to remove this year thing. I don't need that anymore. Right? And look, looks good. Maybe the bottom in the layout, I'm just gonna make it very clear. Where's my bottom? Layout. Margin top 20 pixel. And then here, I'm going to use the year time.now.year. So if you visit this code next year, things still look good. It's like that. Let's implement a header. And the header will just include our brand name. So the header is here. And then I'm going to call maybe the class header, so you guys can style it. But the header, I only do one thing here. I display the brand. Let's say a class brand. You can style it because I put a brand, but let's say Coder School. And then here I do href, which is to go back to the home page. Are we ready for that? And then maybe style, border, bottom, 2 pixel dash black. Alright, maybe margin bottom 20 pixel as well. And this is going to look very nasty. But you can see that all the pages now have what I want as layout. So do we get what layout is all about? Any other ideas? Yes?
I have a question about one of the tasks, which is telling Sinatra what the public folder is.
Yeah.
We didn't do that here, did we?
We did mention it in the lecture, which is if you create a folder named public, anything in there is a static file. It means the file, let's say public/style/app.css. You can go here /style/app.css.
Right.
This is how you use your image files and your CSS files, and later your JavaScript files as well.
But we didn't, like in app.rb, we didn't put any instructions. It's automatically things.
It's automatic. And if you guys scroll down in the lab to the advanced one, you can actually specify. I don't like to call it public folder. You can call it something else here. It's in the bonus. Oscar, it's in the bonus. Yeah? All right. So you can call it static if you like.
Okay.
Right? So let's look at our.
Oh, and I had
yes?
one more question.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm giving instructions to, like for example, an image in an HTML file, am I giving the path? Is it directions from the same file as the HTML file is, from the app, or is it from the root folder of the app?
It's always from the root folder.
Always from the root folder, okay.
Well, it's relative to the URL. So if you already in style, then you just need to do app.js. But in a lot of cases, for example, here you need an image in the index file.
Yeah. Okay, but it doesn't matter. I don't have to like go back and then.
Right. So the easiest way is just to do /images/something.
Okay.
If you do this, it will look at the same path in the URL.
I know what my mistake was. I used /public/images.
Right.
Okay. That's
so just get rid of the word public.
Yeah.
Because it's redundant, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Only these files the server is giving to you directly. Any other files here, the server cannot show you, because if you look at them from the user point of view, if the user can look at all of this code, the user can probably break your app. They can hack into your app, so you don't want that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that was layout. That is cool. That's one way to use the code. Reuse code. One more thing is, did you ever wonder, if you go to Trello mock here, these things, you see you reusing this every time, and if you display the list again, you're reusing the list, right? Don't you want to create something like a method that display a row, and then you just call that row many times? So in the Trello file, here's an example. Right now, your learn string looks pretty simple. right? So, but very soon you may have like learn string here, and then you have a button, not but, almost intentional, huh? Done, and then style maybe float right, margin top, 5 pixels. Let's see what it looks like. This here, hey, almost. I probably shouldn't give it any margin, but you get the idea, right? I am implementing every row, every time I update this row, there's a lot more interesting stuff going on with this row itself. And you don't want to copy this class item row and then do it again multiple times. This seems very redundant. We learn methods, so we need to do something like this for views. Who knows how to do it? Use partial? No. Yeah, so let's create a new file with only this much, and then you say render that file, render that file, render that file. Let's try that. I create a file called underscore item. Underscore here just means, hey, don't use the file directly, okay? Don't use the file directly. So I'm gonna save this right here. Just margin top. Let's make it look a little nicer. All right, I'll copy this whole thing. Remove it. Go to item here, and in that item, I have only the. Okay. I have only one row, only the code for this row. But I'm going to repeat myself. Okay. Save it. I go back to my Trello. Imagine now I wish I could do something like this. I wish I can just say render item.html.erb here for me, right? How do we do that? We already know how to do it. We learned it. This is the part where the brain may actually explode. What do you think? What?
Underscore?
Yes. What? I call ERB inside ERB? Remember, if I give it a string, then that's not good. When I run it, you actually see this thing, right? That's not good. I want you to give me a symbol, and by now you know. ERB will look for this file and then find the name .erb in it. So let's see what it does. Run this. Whoa! Learn string with a done thing, right? So technically now, look, you can implement this again easily and then run it. Looks good? Here's the problem. What's the problem here, Stan? Can you see? No, the text. Alright, the text. Oscar, what do you think the...
So I think we want to create an array and then have it read the names from the array.
Yeah, let's get there. But so how do we change the text in each item? Go in here.
Yeah. And
so instead of learn string, you gotta give it a different thing. It has to be a variable. What variable should we call it?
pass.
This item name? Yeah? So if you need item name and then you run this now, I'd like to prove to you that, one step at a time, it's good for learning. It will say no method name. And then please read carefully. It will say what file it is and what line it is. Line 3, item blah. But here's the funny thing. You're not fixing it by fixing this line. This is what you want. You gotta fix the guy who uses this ERB thing. William, how do I pass in the variable name for this ERB? Yeah, so look at the app.rb file. You see how we pass in the name?
Oh.
So can you help me doing the same thing over here?
Locals,
You gotta give it a hash with a key name. Name what? Name what is learn?
learn strings.
Something like that. And if you do that here, locals, name, learn, array, right? And you can do the same thing again, right? But it's this time you change it to, variables, methods, what's that else, ERB or something, right? Partial. And that's how we display them. That's not too bad. You can pass in here done true, done false. That's not too bad, right? Now let's do what Oscar just said. We need a list of items.
So app dot.
So something like this. What if we can see item.each, do item, and the name here will be Quý. What is name? Item.name. Remember we've been using the item hash there? That's it. But now I need to declare a list of items. If I run this now, I bet more than half of you know that we get the error undefined method or variable items. So what is rendering Trello.html? This guy, right? So I need to give it some items. Yeah? Let's say my items. This time I name it a little bit differently. And you define my items. It's an array. And this array has learn string, done false, learn what? Hash, done true, and then we just do more stuff like that. Sorry, one more, almost ERB and partial. So let's continue. There's one more point I need to show. Oh, this is not good. This is not an item class. This is a hash. Go to Trello. Do you see I use item.name here?
Yeah.
Item is a hash. So you gotta do this, right? It depends, okay? If you use the item.rb class like we did it in the homework, make sure you change it to dot. And run it. Now we have these things. And of course you can use the done button that way. Okay? Now, some of you may feel like, why? Do I have to pass in the name? Do I have to pass in the done? Okay, well, no need, up to you. You can just remove the whole thing and just pass the whole item. Right, Ian? If I pass in the item, then how do you fix my partial? Item, yes, thank you very much. And then, but it has to be an item name, right? So how do you get the name from an item? William? How do you get the name from the item? Item colon name here, right? Because item is a hash. Yeah, if you don't believe me, you can print out the item here. Let's print the item, okay? Just leave it like that and run it. You see the hash? This is how you sometimes can debug. You're like, why is it missing? You can print out the whole thing. And then in some cases, if it looks ugly, you can do dot inspect. If it's an array, but it's okay. Item, so it means you need to print it with the name thing here. And for example, here's the done button. By now, it's very easy for me to do if done is true or if done is false. So, if item done then you say, do it, else, undo it, right? I pass in the whole item, so I have the whole hash. Do it, undo it. Any questions so far? Pretty good, huh? We have HTML, a layout. Here's something you can, fix later. You can fix once, and it just work for everything else. Like maybe the background, the navigation bar, the font, right? Add your CSS file here. And then here, for today, for now, don't use too many CSS, right? Make sure all of them use the same CSS in the layout. For most cases for your project, this is fine. Don't try to be over ambitious, like, home page should use. Just include all of them. It's okay for you to define the home, like about.css, right? And then go to layout, and then include about CSS. All good. And even if the other files are including this, so what? Just don't define crazy stuff like, H1 is colored red, then it affects everyone. But if you do say, about header, right, about heading, be very specific about this rule, then you can include all the CSS files in layout, and it's not a problem. In fact, it's even better, because you load it once, the browser caches it, all the pages in your app using the same cache. If you load a different file in every different page, you go to about page, browser is like, I need to load a new about.css page. You go to home, I need to load the home.css page. So why not tell the browser, hey, when you load the website the first time, load all my CSS. And every time you go anywhere else, they are the same. Okay? So layout will be useful for your homework. Partial. The reason I use underscore here is to remind us that do not use this item thing directly. And when you go to Rails in the fourth week, Rails will automatically, assume that you use underscore. So might as well learn everything the right way. And the only problem there, right? In Rails, you don't have to do all this funny thing, but it'll be shorter. The only funny thing is when you're using a partial, tell yourself that it's an underscore. Right? This is how you reuse code. So partial is you use inside your template. Layout is it's like outside your template, but it has the yield word. This is yield word. Right? You can add a footer, a header, anything you want. Maybe just only yield once, don't yield twice. Right? Okay. There are ways, by the way, to yield here, yield different things, but we're not learning that yet. Okay then, let's get back to our lab, continue, and hope you finish milestone B and C.